Okay, so as the first thing, I wanted each panelist to spend 1 minute to introduce who you are and what you are working for around the data. Okay, so let's welcome the first one, Nicholas. Okay.
Hello, my name is Nicolas Flores, and you will recognize me easily throughout the conference because I'm wearing shorts, and I proudly do so. I lead a team of researchers. We build LLMs from scratch, and we are heavily interested in the topic of open data and open source. And we believe that the models should reflect the individual countries and cultures they are used for, and not just the perspectives of the global north. So we believe in kind of this unbiased multicultural aspect of the models.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please.
I'm Joaquín Salvachu. I'm professor from the Technical University of Madrid, and I am, let's say, like Mario Bros, making the pipes that make it possible. We are with data infrastructure and data protocols, especially regarding all things related to data governance, distributed governance, and data usage control. All the things that require that helps all the ecosystem to grow and work in real time.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Johan Diedrich. I'm a staff engineer and data scientist at the Mozilla Foundation, working on the Mozilla Data Collective. The Mozilla Data Collective is a platform that allows communities to create, curate, and control their data sets. Our mission is to rebuild the AI data ecosystem with communities at its center. We are a collective of linguists, technologists, engineers, policymakers, activists, researchers, and creatives who all want AI, who all want the future of AI that we promised and not the threats that it might present. Right now, communities are given a false choice, either to put their data on the open web and have it scraped in ways that are non-consentful and harmful. They could also be pressured into signing exclusive deals with megacorps and big tech companies that only helps to stifle equity and innovation. Or they could remove their data altogether at the risk of being left out of technological advancements. We believe that there's another way. The Mozilla Data Collective works by allowing you to share your data, retain control and ownership as you see fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Sekambian, and I'm a software engineer by training. So I've been working as an engineer for many years, but now I'm working at Ant Group for open source and models. So I'm local here. By all means, if any of you need local cuisines recommendations, you know what to do after this event, let me know. But back to the more serious topic. So my work for data is as a lead of the open source team. One of the most challenging issues we've been ever having on open source side is being able to collaborate on data, because it's very against human nature to some extent. But it's also one of the most critical challenges that we're facing during the Gen AI timeframe. So the way I'm kind of looking at it is like I'm here, like really we have it's my honor to share the stages with all the researchers and scientists. I guess today what motivates me to be here is like would like to see how a country jointly collaborate from a corporate perspective and research side to be able to really move forward with a lot of this kind of data challenges on a lot of the verticals, and on some, I would say this agentic environment to use all of that. Yeah, there's a long journey to go.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, so.
Okay, I already introduced myself, but just adding some points. Actually, previously Yonghua mentioned maybe today data is important, but data quality is more important. So currently in my lab, I'm leading a lab. The lab name is Human Language Technology. We mainly focus on several things. The major one is audio quality prediction. So that is a tool to make sure we can, in the future, collect a more high quality data sets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then after the self-introduction, we will go to the first question, is about the data. And just now, Professor Qin actually introduced the data set activities around the speech. I think that's a good example because he mentioned the responsible speech, inclusive speech, accessible data, right? But the first question actually is, besides today's data sets online or in your lab or in your enterprise, what is the next important data in your mind? And consider this data might need to grab from the internet or come from some source, right? And what is the best or ideal source you think? And let me introduce today's policy rule is after each question answer on the stage, we will also invite any audience to raise your question and join the discussion for one or more two questions. We want the talk panel to be more interactive. Okay. Okay, so the first question is to Nicholas. Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah. So apart from the different sectors that were presented here, the SDG, for example, climate and data, health, and also agriculture and so on. So the data sets that are not yet online available, it would be very interesting to really open up the data silos and make them useful for the training of the models, of the large language models, and we believe that this would benefit from introducing new perspectives to these topics and not just reflective the opinions of the people that so far make these models. And another factor comes in with the texts that we have. We have different semantics. So, for example, the word risk is understood in different cultures. It's understood in a different way. So these data sets, and in order to make models that can be used globally, we need to really try to see that even these cultural differences are also reflected in the data sets. And for this, I would think it's important also to think about specific data filtering pipelines, because as Professor has mentioned, it's important not to have only an abundance of data, but we also need to be able to filter out high quality open data and make those, at the end, those data sets accessible. And last but not least, you mentioned Hugging Face in your talk, and which believe is an important source, but we also need to think of other platforms to provide models and data sets that are independent of Hugging Face.
Okay, independent of Hugging Face. Okay, let's talk about it a little bit more later. Okay, interesting point. So the second is Ho Queen. Yeah.
Yes, in our case, we have been thinking a lot about this. First, we are talking not about static data, but also real-time data. For example, in a smart cities, it's quite important, the data of today, the data of yesterday. This means that we need protocols that share data with the proper metadata in order to be trained on the fly for things that are happening right now, not only the things that happened in the past. This means we need protocols for this. In our case, we have seen that some parties of the government, in the case of Spain and Europe, they are forced to publish as open data, but the companies didn't want to share that. That's why we are moving to some mixed paradigm, that is the data spaces. That means that it's not fully open, but it's available. It's not free, but you can have some kind of contract with the provider and the consumer. And this means that we are open silos that right now are closed because they think if they share, they can lose opportunities. And then you need to assure that the data is properly used. Here we enter in protocols for distributed governance and especially for data usage control. This means that if I give you the data for this use, you cannot use for another without a renegotiation of the conditions. So let's say that there is open ways, but we are opening other opportunities that may lead even in the future that these companies share for open. Now they are feared, but with this trust, they can go for this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, maybe no. Yeah, maybe we will save the question and ask Professor Qin. Not because of time. Not any of us or all of us answer each question. So yeah, Professor Qin, do you want to add more besides your? Yeah.
Okay. So in my thinking, there are several, because we already released, today I only mentioned the child Mandarin and the senior talk. Actually, there are a lot of other data is ongoing, like emotion data, like audio-visual speech recognition data. So in my view, for the data sharing, we need some, governance methodology, because today, as a university professor, I have some concern for the data, how to be used for commercial purpose. So today, most of the data are released for research purpose. I think that's one thing in my brain, to think about how to more effectively to share data in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so I think three of our panelists has shared their mind, and just now let's see who in this room want to ask question or comment on one or two points. Yeah, any of you? Yeah, please.
Can you hear me? All right. I definitely agree that access to data sharing is important, but if we take a step back on the principle of open source, collaboration on open source works because we can basically audit transparently what the different collaborating parties are doing. In the data space, unfortunately, even when the data is shared, we cannot necessarily trust the provenance. And this actually is a big problem in terms of how would I even provide repeatability. Say we talk about research, right? How can I independently reproduce your research if I can't trust your data? Obviously, we don't have the equivalent of Git for data. So what do you think is the next step, or what should the open source community do to enable this infrastructure that can create the trust and transparency for data?
Okay, yeah. So any of you want to comment? Answer this question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to answer this. So at the Mozilla Foundation, one of our big initiatives is Common Voice, which is a large open source and open contributed speech data set comprised of about 300 languages. And all of the contributions to this data set has been done by people in the communities, in these language communities by themselves. And so we do have a way that we can track who has contributed to these data sets, where has it come from. We do a lot of work to also de-anonymize the sources of them as well, so we can protect the people who have contributed to the sets, but we do want to have that sourcing capability of these data sets as it evolves over time. You can go from the current data set to all the way back years in the past and see how it's evolved and changed as well. So at the foundation, we're definitely thinking about this, and the Mozilla Data Collective platform is going to be a way to further, I think, towards those efforts.
Yeah.
There is a dark side also, because people may poison the data. I mean, we are for good, but someone could be not for good. This means that we should also have a way in the provenance to detect and mark this as someone that wants to poison and wants to do some not very nice things. This protocol must not be only for good, but we can consider also the possibility that someone is trying to send wrong data for whatever reason, and to mark and automatically discard this in the quality.
Yeah, I just want to add a very quick observation. I think like GOSIM question is very fundamental. It's like in a sense that if you're contributing code to GitHub, you will have a PR with a trace record, and it's uniquely identifiable, and nobody can deny this is your contribution. But similar things doesn't really happen on the data side. So that's a technical challenge in which might take years to overcome, let's say like Git for data, right? So that's one aspect which we don't have a solution here, but everyone agrees that might be a problem. But I've been seeing some efforts from the community trying to mitigate some of those challenges. For instance, Camel, which is a multi-agent framework. I think what they try to do is like, because on the multi-agent side, the environment has always been challenging. So they do need this more like crowdsourcing or open source way of building environment. So what they did is actually they open source a new project. I forgot if that's called Arena or like OWL. So they put all the projects crowdsourced to 75 participating individuals. And then toward the end of the day, they're going to be writing a paper with all the author names put on that paper. So it's going to be a very crazily long author list for a paper, but it's an effective way of motivating, people, especially, researchers at master or PhD, currently still ongoing, to really contributing to the data set. So just like 2 cents, my 2 cents.
Yes. An open question back to is when you train large language models, unlike other previous narrow AI, you need huge amounts of data sets. And especially the open source lab builders, they do not have the capacity to look into each data space there is on the world. So there is definitely a need to collect the specific data sets that are connected to SDG. Maybe GDCs, as has been presented, could be a solution, but this is definitely an open question. We cannot access each data space and then negotiate with the contractors. This will not fly. So there is a need, and if whoever has an idea.
Yeah, this is a great technical challenge because if the data set is small, yes, today we have a lot of technology, even include the blockchain, right? But currently what we talk about, maybe some of the data set is tens or hundreds of trillion tokens, that kinds of huge data set. So really that's a greater challenge, yeah. Okay, let's move on the second one. You still have the chance to discuss this because the second question is exactly the share of the data, how to share the data. And here, when we consider the share of the data, I think Professor Qin just now mentioned, when he collected each piece of the data from the children or parent or the woman, they need to sign the agreement. That's how finally this data can open source. But today, yes, that's one point. The other point is today we are not force anyone to open source all the data, but open source or share within some group, alliance, or even the exchange between the enterprise, how to make this data can be used by others. So this is the question come from. So here, first I want to ask, maybe Joaquin? Yeah.
Yes, in our case, we think that the important part of this is the metadata in order to automatize all the process. Here we are using exactly LLMs to annotate data on the fly, and this means that we get a higher quality for the people that is sharing. Some people that is sharing, they do not take care about the metadata because, well, they share, but they don't want to do it. So there should be these tools that we are developing right now with some protocols that allows to annotate and give it the highest quality as possible.
Okay, that's one part. And so, and I want Johan, yes.
Yeah, sure. So when I think about data sharing, I'm also thinking about data governance and how do we allow the producers of the data to self-determine how they want the data to be used and how do they want it to be shared. So on our platform, we have a general sort of terms of use for the data, but then each community that contributes data can also describe and basically make their own licensing agreements that if you download the data set, you are legally binded to. So we're thinking a lot about how does data governance start at the level of the individual and the community so they can self-determine how their data is going to be used when it's put out into the open and is downloadable in these ways. We're also thinking about ways to track that data as it moves through the ecosystem, so using techniques like watermarking and other things as a way to monitor the ecosystem and understand how is that data being fed through and used in different contexts, and how can we sort of track its usage. So many difficult questions to answer, but I think we're trying our best to think about how the producers of the data first get to determine how their data is being shared and developing mechanisms around that best serve their needs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Richard, yeah, I think besides this, you also have some consideration about the open data and incentive things. Yeah, so I want you to share. Yeah.
Thanks, Yonghua. Because we've been actually talking on this topic a few times with Yonghua. I'm a pessimist on this topic because honestly, I feel sharing data, again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is against human nature. That said, we are open sourcers here, so we want to solve that problem. Just a disclaimer, opinions are my own, not my company's. I think there are a couple of things in which we might need to really work hard to overcome. So first thing first, we should probably talk less about data because the word is way too sensitive for something which doesn't really mean what it means. Allow me to elaborate. So, for example, after LLM became, the sensation, a lot of data sources like Reddit, they don't sell their data. They don't sell their data at all in the past, but once LLM became available, Reddit was like, excuse me, we're blocking our APIs, we're not giving you the data for free. The data is the most valuable thing on the planet, which is true. But I mean, if we're using the metaphor of data is an oil of this information age, nobody can use crude oil. You need refineries, right? So it's like, if you just kind of control the oil, and then you're not allowing, but you don't have the refinery, and you're not allowing the refinery to have access to the crude oil, everyone is suffering. I mean, we're in an SDG forum, we're talking about externalities. So this is exactly how negative externality is being defined, right? So, but I mean, it's just impossible to have that conversation, face to face with someone saying that, hey, you should not do this, but it's correct, but it's not meaningful. So I guess one thing you can do is, instead of talking about open data and sharing data, we use some other terms to describe the same thing. For example, benchmark, evaluation, inputs to reinforcement learning pipeline. So the way I'm kind of looking at it is I'm kind of making arguments that we don't have enough data at this moment at all. We're missing data. We're missing data on almost every single aspect. We're missing data on the vertical, business verticals, right? So we don't have enough data on, emotional controls. We don't have nicely, high quality label data on actuarials or, accounting. We're missing a lot of those. So instead of saying that all the actuarials should be producing our data and open source it, why can't we just maybe think about, we don't have a good benchmark, but we do want a good way of measuring how good the model is. And you can publish papers, you can put your names on a lot of things by doing that. Maybe you should do that. It's about data, but it's not about data. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, everyone is talking about agents, right? So but intrinsically, we are still really far from anyhow for agent to be productionized because we are not having sufficient amount of data on almost every single spectrum of the toolings. So for instance, even for browser use, which is one of the most commonly used scenario, we don't have enough browser use data, right? You're from Mozilla. So how can we do that? I mean, it's quite hard to do because you need almost high caliber labels to kind of label your data in order for you to get high quality data set. So which kind of leads to the next topic is I would like to maybe make a call to action. I don't know how we're going to be doing it, but I would like to make a call to action to redefining data label. Because the data labelers, by our, I would say stereotype, regular average Joe living somewhere, marking this, if this is correct or not. But in fact, I mean, a lot of these labels we need now are high caliber data labels, in which cannot be done by average Joe. They need to be done by experts. So the data label work is a valuable work. But I haven't really been hearing a lot about people describing it that way. So in order to do that, I think there are 2 or 3 ways which can make it work. One is I think we do need to think hard on how to productionize the tooling of doing data label. So for example, I think like CAPTCHA is maybe one of the most smartest product for doing data label, right? So like it kind of put like very, I would say, kind of like intrinsically annoying work into a safety feature, in which everyone need to kind of pretty much pass through that in order for you to actually get to the next stage. And people are very happy about really kind of trying hard to, hey, where are the bikes and where are the like buses? And it kind of leads to the high quality data set like ImageNet and a lot of those. So I believe there will be this kind of new forms of products in which we can actually work together jointly in the open source community. Second, I've been discussing with some of the people making benchmarks nowadays. So like maybe just for everyone's information, if you want to do a high caliber mathematics benchmark or a physics benchmark, you need a physicist. You need to pay them. And the workflow is very, I would say, difficult to use. So for instance, the physicist might need to think really hard and put a question. And then the question need to be quickly evaluated by himself or by the, the benchmark agency. And then that handshake might fail. It's like, sorry, this question is old. We've seen that before. And then the next stage, if he really think of a good question, so great. Now let's do this kind of like benchmark test for 5 different models. Okay, all the models failed. Your question might be too difficult. Let's redo it, right? So a lot of those is essentially going to be, so it needs to pretty much go through like 5 or 6 handshakes in order for this question to be delivered, and might cost you like 6 to 7 hours. But if you can productionize that and reduce this handshake by building, say, sandbox or evaluation, everything will be much smoother. So I will just end my conversation here.
Yeah, so I think these kinds of tools or things, some already in open source, and we need to encourage more on these things. And it means that this stage is very inclusive. We have the different points, and we can include different angle of about the open data and also the data sharing. So any comments or questions from this room? Yeah, from our audience, please.
Thank you very much. I really greatly agree with the latest gentleman, Richard, on also the kind of how to relate it to the oil industry. However, I think the way we look at it, at least for my institution or in the past institutions, there are two things that will drive like the open data or sharing the data. The first thing is standardizing. So data standardization, data is very contextual, dependent on the commercial value chain. So standardizing, because there's, in many instances, in the development world at least, in many instances, there is the will to share data, or at least whatever is existing. However, the mechanism and the way how to share the data is not there, even though to describe even the most basic things. So we need to work more on standardizing and describing what needs to be shared first, and maybe open a marketplace for like that kind of sharing and let it develop and see if it eventually will lead to some sort of like open part or like closed part. The second aspect I wanted to touch on is also like the security/privacy implications. Because of the context of the data, sometimes sharing data, and I can come at it from like my practice is in infrastructure. There's so much value in sharing data about infrastructure for interoperability and like extending the networks and extending the reach, etc. However, there's also security implications. So some governments or some administrations could be very sensitive about it. So I was just curious to hear from the panel about these two aspects.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a real comment from our ITU leader. Yes, standard. So since the second question related to our last topic, so maybe let's see any comment about around the standard point of view from our state.
Yes, in our case, this is what we call in Europe is the data spaces approach. So it takes exactly this approach that you are mentioned of having both things, and also conditions to publish and with anonymizing some things. For example, in infrastructure, if you leave the APs, could lead to a very easy attack. So you must assure that this to publish or to share this data, this is deleted, and this is in our workflow, in our languages, is assured that this is done. So all these things are a lot of standards that have been developed right now around Gaia X and data spaces.
Actually, I also want to add a comment, and the standard, I think, especially the data quality standard is very important for sharing, I feel. One is when we get the contribution or the data source from different parties, we want the data quality can be standardized so that it can lower the barrier when we do the high quality data filtering or process. That's one thing. The second thing is, actually I can share one example. When we encourage the different party to do the donation, since each party today, they cannot get, by themselves get enough data. So that's why we build the alliance in China that each party, each organization, they donate the data, and on the other side, they can get back the data from this group, which they want, okay? But how to measure how much data they can get back from the group? Actually, we develop some kind of data quality standard. So quality multiplies their volume contribute to this group, then that they can get the credit. And they use the credit to get back the data from others. So that's one way, just example, yeah. Okay, then let's go to the last question is, it's about the data security and governance. Sometimes, yes, the term balance might not good, but how to think about the data security governance versus open innovation? Yeah, both sides we need, but in your mind, how to balance or any good example of any mechanism? So, yeah, maybe first one is Nicholas. Yeah, I want you to share your view about this data governance versus the innovation.
Yeah, so first of all, when we talk about innovation in the field where I come from, that is large language models. I cannot speak so much about narrow AI and other topics, like many times computer vision has specific tasks that will not be solved by a foundational model or large language model or vision language model or whatsoever. From our perspective, we really have to stress this again and again, is the size of the data sets. Many companies and organizations come to us and say, hey, we have super interesting data sets. And they said, how many tokens do you have approximately? And they have like 1 million tokens, which is like probably 1 million words. And that is not interesting for our pre-training. I have to really be with Richard. Thank you for, basically you stole my talk from tomorrow. So what we really need is benchmarking data sets or developing benchmarking. So in that sense, we can benchmark models or AI applications that are based on the large language models or large multimodal models. And that is really, I think, the number one risk. We can have all the ideas about data governance. We will not foster innovation, to come back to this point, if we do not have attractive data sets. Another thing is that what we think might be an attractive data sets, which used to be metadata. I used to work for the libraries, and libraries thought their metadata is really the killer. We have the best metadata. We describe what is inside the book. And we have seen that their metadata is not so relevant anymore these days, unfortunately, I have to say. Despite having put a lot of standardization efforts into them and also a lot of data governance efforts. So I really think the first to start with, we need to have attractive data sets that caters to the the large language or foundational models. And what we would need is, and Richard has put it so nicely, we need high quality data in the sense it mimics an expert in the field. So we know that from a lot of big tech companies, they don't hire click workers anymore. They hire Harvard professors in order to make data labels. Yeah, so this is really the fundamental change that we have seen. And whenever we wonder how those high quality models, how they produce their output, it's definitely because highly skilled, highly trained academics have put their things into this. And then we have to also be like very, we have to be, what I think will be important is the data provenance, because we don't, and I think this was a very interesting point raised by you, that data poisoning is real. We really want to know what kind of data it comes from. But first of all, we have to start with the innovation and produce attractive applications.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you come from the Ant group. Yeah, I think you have a lot of thinking about the data governance.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, first thing, opinions are my own, disclaimer. Yeah, I would say, like, first thing first, I think, like, Yonghua asked a very good question, right? So if there's an intrinsic, I would say, challenges between openness and governance, I choose openness all the time. So I have a line that's saying that I think open is a choice. By all means, like, nobody is forcing you to open anything, right? So if we open source a project from a corporate perspective, it's a joint decision made by our internal community. That said, you know, you will have a parallel universe that if you don't open source it, you might still be able to do something about it. But we always believe in the power of open, and especially consider that we don't have a lot of synthesized data and how fast this field has been evolving. I would say open data, the importance of open data is probably at a very top at this moment. So that's basically my stand. And in terms of how to solve that problem, because if we're doing open, we might need to overcome some challenges. I think there are essentially three challenges, three keywords. One is technology. The second is governance. Third is incentive. So for technology, I know that Annie and a lot of people from Linux Foundation are driving the initiative for privacy enhancing technology. I think that's definitely one of the key pieces of technology. So for instance, like confidential computing, TE, and we have a project called Secret Flow, like which does all the MPC and federated learning. All of those technology, including like blockchain, right? So those technologies are important, but how to put all of those technologies together to be able to offer something like the gentleman was mentioning as a platform or a standard, so that people can share the data, you know, confidently and I would say carefree, there's new miles to go. And the second keyword is governance. The governance is a little bit more difficult in terms of like, we just need to have the standard and the guardrails in place. Because I mean like, imagine that when people ask this question, so what should I do? What are they really asking, right? They're asking about the top line and the bottom line. So governance is really the bottom line. People want to know that, hey, if I'm sharing my data this way, it's guaranteed all right. But do such a bottom line exist? Do they exist here in China, in Europe, or anywhere else? I don't know. I think there's still like a long way to go in terms of like, do we have enough, I would say, quantizations of different data types, or you know, like level 1 to 5 maybe. I think those governance and policies are still missing. It's missing all the way from you know like the schemas of the data to the ownership of the data, to like the data lineage, right? A lot of things are still missing over there. Last but not least is the incentive. The way I'm kind of looking at it is like, you know, we have a lot of open source people in the room. One of the most difficult questions we're always getting is like, we've been doing open source, but nobody give us money, right? Like nobody actually even support our work. Let's not make the same mistake again for open data. So I think for open data, there are definitely ways for us to realize, you know, the high quality data labeled by a professor, right, or pay them. But if we really want to open the floor to, you know, like everyone to be participating, there's still definitely like, you know, technology and, you know, product gaps there need to be addressed. But I think the most intrinsic and most difficult question now is really, do we actually have sufficient amount of infrastructure to be open so people can participate in post-training, right? So if I have a model that I just open post-training for my reinforcement learning pipeline, and if I put one question in, do we have verifications, evals, or benchmarks to show that the model becomes like this better with my question, right? So if we get that, we can incentivize that very easily because it generates value, regardless if it's like, internal or external, like externality. But I cannot believe that, our technology is not there yet. But that's definitely one thing in which, like, because we're also working very closely with our internal team from Inclusion AI, which is Ant Group's AGI team. We have reinforcement learning. We're working on like RFT. It's a difficult question. We don't have sufficient amount of benchmarks. We need more good benchmarks, just like what Nicholas mentioned. And it's also basically a call to action for the for the community that please, we need more benchmarks so that we can actually address those questions in a sustainable manner. All right, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So let's see, any comment or question? Yeah, please.
Just to follow up, so the analogy of the refinery, there's a commercial value chain. Like you take oil, and then there's a market for oil, and then the refinery refine, and then the cars will use that oil. So like kind of like some sort of like a business case. So my question here, what is the business case of data sharing? If I'm like, what is the value chain of contributing and sharing? Because at the end of the day, I think that incentive pillar that you mentioned is pretty much the most important one.
I can share from the industry perspective. I know the German car manufacturing and, for example, robotic data. Not one car manufacturer in Germany has enough robotic data to enhance large language models with it. So in their case, data sharing would make sense. But of course, this data sharing would be also just within the circle of contributors. But this is like one easy aspect. The other aspect is if you have data, but you need applications, you put your data out and you'll get the applications that you want. And that's I think these are two really good incentives.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that too, I think inclusiveness and being able to build products for as many people as possible is one of the incentives around data sharing. So with Common Voice, we have over 300 languages from around the world. For example, let's take China. If you were to only have Mandarin as your Chinese language, but not to include the other 79 dialects, you would have products that would only work for a smaller amount of people. So we think about how do we make technology benefit as many people as possible, humanity in general. Data sharing is the way to do that and to incentivize people that by contributing to these data sets, you make the technology more inclusive for not just yourself, but for other people who could benefit from it downstream.
But that's the very reason why it's not working. Because if we look at the internet today, like we don't have inclusiveness because of that, because there's no business case to go for the not inclusive parts. Like how can you make a marketplace where there's a fair share for everyone, including for the service providers?
Yeah.
Sorry. Just from the EU perspective, we have definitely several policies in place. We have the EU AI Act, and so my team filters for GDPR-sensitive data, copyright-sensitive data, and also adult content. These are the three filtering types that we are putting out there. And what we would do is, for example, we would open source not only the data sets that we have, we would also open source the filters, so future data set holders can use those filters, which in turn would make it easy to make new data sets. This is just what we do from our perspective. Also, it answers your questions a little bit about data governance. This is really being enforced these days.
Okay, actually for this data governance, it also related to the law. Currently, I feel that in different countries, just the test water, no matter in China or in US in the past 2 years, those cases, I think the judgment is a kind of test water, have different kinds of result when there is some law or suit for that. So that's another thing. But that will become an issue if we don't, in different countries, the data governance or especially when the model trained with some kinds of copyright data, the result in the law will be different. I think that will also impact the global collaboration or the innovation in global. So I think that is also another way, another thing. I do feel that no matter the UN or the ITU, this global organization, can you create some kinds of reference or preference so that when this country, since currently is in the stage of test water, they also want to see any kinds of reference or preference. Okay.
Yeah, so maybe just a very quick comment. So go to the economy 101, right? So one of the most classic case we use in economy 101 is if you have a car marketplace, how to prevent that becomes a lemon car marketplace. It's like you need a quality control. And the quality control, how do you control quality? You need eval. So it's like that's how the evaluation benchmark really becomes like the important part in terms of like, if you want a high quality or a business case for data transactions, the evaluation benchmark is pretty important. I'm kind of making like another metaphor there is, to some extent, almost feels like using high quality data to train models here is advanced degree, right? So you have a very small amount of data which you can train to learn something really difficult. And in China, we have the education system called Gaokao, right? So it's like basically the level 12 to university. And for Gaokao, they use all this kind of like different, I would say, training books. But eventually one book really stand out. It's called 5年高考3年模拟. So it's like, it's basically this booklet, which almost every single student in China will read and do all the questions in there to prepare them for Gaokao. So how that book eventually was being produced is because, people tried it. They really figure out, these questions help them to raise their marks. And so, yeah, I would say that first thing first, really control the quality and give it to some time and really let the good data set to be exposed in that way.
Okay, yeah. So because thanks for all your comments and conversations since the time's up. So as conclusion, we do feel that today we find out how to, we might need a lot of effort to come to the next step, to together maybe to see how to deal with those large volume of the data, to see how to trace the data's contribution, change, or usage, or how to, if we can build up some kind of open source platform to evaluate the data quality in the world, or if we can together to come up with some kinds of standards or even for some reference case for the law, okay? We can have more discussion offline. Thank you, thanks for all of your contribution in today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.